Welcome to World Business. I'm Guy Shone. Now, Professor James Robinson is the joint winner of the 2024 Nobel Prize for Economics. He's a professor at the University of Chicago, director of the Pearson Institute, and author of several renowned books, including Why Nations Fail, which he wrote with fellow Nobel Prize winner Professor Daron Acemoglu. One key finding to James Robinson's work has been the way societies are organised appears to have a much greater impact on prosperity and equality than factors like geography or culture. Well, with so much geopolitical reorganisation taking place in the world at the moment, who better to speak to in order to demystify and dissect the economic status quo in Europe, the US and the global system as a whole? Well, James Robinson joins us now from Chicago. Professor, thank you very much for joining us on World Business. Let's start with the United States. When you look at the reconfiguring of economic policy under this new Trump administration, what predictions can you make about the likely impact?
The history of the United States in the last 200 years, has been a history of, by world historical standards, terrifically inclusive in what we call inclusive institutions, which create broad-based incentives and opportunities for people and which have stimulated entrepreneurship and economic growth and prosperity. And those inclusive institutions are both in the political domain and in the economic domain. And I honestly think that, that's all being challenged now. What we've had in the last 40 or 50 years is a kind of dynamic of increasing inequality, lower social mobility, sort of structural change and dislocation created by globalization that's created a lot of social discontent and unhappiness. And people are looking for solutions. And, President Trump won the election with a very curious coalition of white working class people and, oligarchs who are dismantling, in my view, many aspects of inclusive institutions. I think you see that in the state. They're trying to deinstitutionalize the federal state. They don't respect democracy, which is a key political institution. President Trump and his cronies denied that he lost the election. So I think you see an attack on inclusive political institutions, and I think that's undoubtedly going to go along with an attack on inclusive economic institutions, because what oligarchs always want is to eliminate competition. I think you've seen that before. You see that with Mr. Gates. We talk about that in our book. You've seen that with Mr. Zuckerberg. Nobody likes competition. So I think they will use this political power to eliminate competition. So I think you see a massive potentially a massive reversal of inclusive institutions in the United States at the moment.
Now, one of the themes of the Munich Security Conference was a shift away from consensus building towards a more multipolar global system. Is this a trend you recognize, and what will be the likely consequences, do you think?
Yes, I think that's going on. The world's becoming more multipolar, mostly because of the rise of China in the last 50 years. I think everyone's trying to adjust to that economically and politically. But now there does seem to be an attempt by the United States to kind of disengage from many multilateral institutions. I think that's a bad thing. There's a good reason those institutions were there. Those institutions were created after the Second World War because people, I think, rightly interpreted the previous chaos before the First World War and during the First and Second World Wars as being due to a lack of coordination and discussion and, amongst the great powers, and being due to a lack of fora where they could negotiate and resolve their difficulties. So to the extent that those institutions are being hollowed out or abandoned, President Trump endlessly threatened to leave NATO. I think I think we see, you look at history and you'll see that that's going to be a disaster because it leaves less scope for, what's the expression, jaw, and more scope for war.
Professor, we know that economic growth is stagnating in Europe. What is your sense of both the cause and the remedy?
Yeah, I don't think there's a definitive set of answers to that. I think it's certainly clear that something that's making Europe very vulnerable at the moment is its relative economic performance compared to the United States has deteriorated significantly in the last 20 or so years. There's been a widening gap in living standards, and the United States is where the action is. If you think about, the dynamics of technology, the IT revolution, all of this kind of current AI, that's all being driven by the United States. There's nothing happening in Europe. So what's causing that exactly? That there's as many opinions as there are economists about that. I think there's a serious discussion going on, particularly about, whether or not this is due to, kind of too much regulation in the European Union, or kind of just a sort of entrepreneurial environment created by EU regulations. And I think it just needs much more thought here. There's different ways of organizing capitalism. I think the history of post-war Europe shows that. The way the German model of economic success functioned, or the Scandinavian model of economic success worked, was extremely different from the United States, but it was terrifically successful up until recently. So I don't think the conclusion here is, move in the Trump direction of deregulating everything, abolishing trade unions and all of this. I think, this European model of capitalism has to be kind of rebooted. This social democratic model of capitalism has to be rebooted. And that needs a lot of creative thinking, and it needs a lot of discussion, about the vulnerabilities that the stagnation of economic growth in Europe has created.
Professor James Robinson, thank you very much indeed for joining us from Chicago.
My pleasure.
Now, shifting focus to another part of the world, economic growth is a key priority for the Organisation of Turkic States, the intergovernmental organisation designed to promote cooperation between countries including Turkey, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan and Uzbekistan, has announced the creation of the Turkic Investment Fund, designed to boost entrepreneurship, growth, job creation, research, innovation, and socio-economic development. Well, recently I met with the fund's founding president, Mr. Baghdad Amriev, and I asked him to explain his vision and the growth expectations for the Turkic Investment Fund. Well, thank you very much for joining us on A News. Can I start by asking you to give us an overview of the key objectives of the Turkic Investment Fund?
You know that Turkic-speaking countries, which are Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan, Turkey, Turkmenistan, as well as Hungary, they established their first political and economic organization 2009, 15 years ago. Then this organization, by the name of Turkic Council, was reformatted and renamed as the Organization of Turkic States 2021 during the Istanbul Summit. This is the main comprehensive Turkic cooperation institution. And also under the umbrella of the Organization of Turkic States, there are some affiliated organizations like Turksoy is covering the cooperation of cultural sphere, and the Turkic Academy, science and education. Turkic Parliamentary Assembly, this is the union of our parliaments. And so the so-called Turkic cooperation was going and growing very fast. Of course, to complete the Turkic cooperation framework, of course, we needed economic entities. So we established the joint Turkic Chamber of Commerce and Industry 2019. Then while trying to strengthen the economic cooperation, of course, there was a need for financial institutions as well. Because, of course, we encourage economic cooperation between our countries, invite business communities to work together. But they need, of course, support financially as well. That's why the first financial institution of the Turkic states under the name of Turkey Investment Fund was established 2022 by the decision of the Samarkand Summit of the leaders of the Turkic world. I was appointed as the first founding president, and we start all our procedures. You know, the procedures are very important. It's not easy to establish financial institutions. We did, and 2024 we became functional, and now we are completing the last procedures related to the operational activities of the fund, and starting from April, May, we will start our operational activities, start to finance projects, and contribute to the economic cooperation and integration between the Turkic states.
And we can hear, we're here in Baku at this event for the Organization of Turkic States. We can hear the collaboration going on around us. Partnership, collaboration, as you say, very, very important to the fund. Can you give us some examples of joint projects and how they're helping to drive growth going forward?
You know, this fund, this financial institution is called fund, not a bank. Despite that, it will be functioning as a development bank as well. This is the main area of activities. So this fund has, let's say, 4 dimensions. First dimension is acting as a development bank, financing projects in our countries, mostly joint projects between our entrepreneurs. Second dimension is facilitating the Turkic economic cooperation, which contribute to the economic integration between our Turkic states. Number 3, facilitating the access of our companies to the financial resources. So encouraging investments from abroad to our countries. And number 4, using the potential of the existing regional and international financial institutions. We are in close contact with them, and we are considering joining to the joint projects, ongoing joint projects between our governments and the international financial institutions. So we are working to use the great, huge potential of the international financial institutions to attract resources, funds to our fund and to our countries. So 4 dimensions. What projects we are going to prioritize? First of all, as I mentioned, joint projects with the participation of 2 or more our countries. There are a lot of projects. And our activity will be covering nearly all the economic spheres: logistics, infrastructure, industry, digitalization, and entrepreneurship. So everything will serve the Turkic integration economically, will be, of course, our focus.
And what nature of growth are you anticipating for the fund over the next few years?
Our initial capital now, $600 million, and according to our plan, we are going to increase our initial capital up to $1 billion this year, and in the upcoming years, more. I'm talking about initial capital contributions of our countries. I think that during the upcoming 3 years, we will be able to increase our initial capital up to maybe $3 billion. But also we are cooperating, negotiating with the international financial institutions. They also want to participate in our projects. And our governments are also, we have also in our governments, we have a lot of financial institutions, funds, development banks, state-owned banks and funds. They will be also our partners, and the total amount of money we can use as a fund for financing projects in our countries will be increased in the upcoming years significantly.
Wow, significant growth projected. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on A News, Mr. President.
Thank you very much.
Now, with many global companies announcing financial results this week, Katie Wilson is in the A News newsroom with her results update.
Insurance giant AXA announces its full-year earnings for 2024. CEO Thomas Buberl gave an interview last week to the Harvard Business Review where he shared his vision for the next stage of the organisation's development. He said it was critical for AXA to explore simpler, more flexible products and new modes of distribution, including non-profits and NGOs, mobile operators, digital financial services banks and agricultural cooperatives. AXA now insures 14 million customers in these sectors, but Mr. Buberl wants that number to be 20 million by 2026. He also highlighted a new business line called Inclusive Insurance, which covers health conditions such as chronic diseases and for people and businesses that are typically underinsured, such as contract workers and gig workers and micro enterprises. Budweiser's Hong Kong-based Asia-Pacific business prepares to announce Q4 results for 2024. The Asia-Pacific region has shown mixed performance over the last few quarters. Taiwan, Hong Kong and Australia saw dividends drop in the third quarter, while Singapore and South Korea enjoyed increases. Thailand has also been a market showing strong performance recently. Analysts are generally predicting a positive outlook for Budweiser's financials in the final quarter of 2024. Toys R Us ANZ provide a half-year earnings update for 2025. The famous toy retailer that left many markets in the Northern Hemisphere but has flourished down under lost their CEO Penny Cox last week in a board restructure. However, Toys R Us has just secured a new strategic partnership with Directed Electronics, aiming to accelerate product development and enhance market presence.
Thanks, Katie. Well, that is all we have time for on World Business this week. Do stay up to date with the latest business news from around the world on the A News website and across our social media channels. And join us again next week on World Business.